I'm Kate. I study classical mythology, classical archaeology, and Percy Jackson. I'm here today to give you my review of the first 2 episodes of Percy Jackson. Now, this is more of a just saw the episodes and these are my initial thoughts review than a planned out essay format review. I write enough essays at the moment. Starting with episode 1, I played dodgeball with cannibals. So this episode makes clear from the beginning how this season is going to be different from the book. One of the first things that it makes clear is that Percy is not in the dark about Tyson being a Cyclops. I personally like this choice for multiple reasons. One, it is made clear in the books that Sally can see through the mist. And of course, Percy can see through the mist. But it can depend on the day and the creature or event, whether Percy can see it through the mist. Sometimes things do trick him, and then he has to force himself to see through it. Sally, on the other hand, because she's a mortal that can see through the mist, by book 4, where we meet Rachel better, we kind of get the idea that these mortal seers can see everything, you know? Percy can get tricked because he's young, but Sally, no. And so it's always been a little weird that Sally didn't notice that Tyson was a Cyclops in the book. Now, we can make whatever excuses we need, but I like that Rick decided that we weren't going to go that route and that they would just both know. They would both be able to see through the mist easy. I also like that because it changes their dynamic, partly because Tyson moves in with them. Now, I really like this choice because it always felt a little weird in Sea of Monsters that Tyson just lived on the street the whole time. Even when he was going to the school with Percy, he was still living on the street. The school just let him live on the street. They didn't do anything about it. The whole, this is community service thing was so weird in the book. And I know it was supposed to be weird because we're supposed to see the hypocrisy of the school, but that Percy and Sally didn't do anything about it either kind of always felt a little off in the book. So I like that they also fixed that problem. It was 2 problems fixed in 1. And so I really like that change. But that's just the beginning of the episode. Oh, just to be clear, another thing I like about this whole opening is that it reminds us that Sally is just the best person. Percy is having problems with Tyson, and Sally is just no. He is your friend. You're going to take care of him, and he is going to camp. I just love Sally for that. She's not taking any of this BS from the gods and the demigods and the mortals. She's you're going to be nice to Tyson, you're going to take care of him. And I just really appreciate that they get that parts of Sally's personality so right in such a short time. She's not in very much of this episode, but she really does feel like Sally Jackson. So I'm really happy that they did that. The next change that was really obvious to me was skipping school. So I get that it's a TV show and we have to cut things out for time. I understand. But it seems like one of the main things that gets cut out is Percy's, basically anything cool about Percy in the mortal world. One of the most hilarious parts of the books is that Percy is not only infamous in the Greek world, but he's infamous in the mortal world too. They cut out everything in the first season with Percy and Ares fight, getting on live television, and then them using that footage to convince everyone that he'd been trafficked across country. And so then he was able to use that to get home and clear his name after all of the things that he does in the first book, which they do bring up, like people making the connections, like Sally goes missing, and then there's the bus, and then there's the arch, and they make a big enough deal about the arch. But we never find out how Percy gets off the hook for any of that, you know? And it's just kind of thrown to the side, which is one of my problems with season 1. Though I will say I just rewatched it, and it is way better the second go around when I'm not focusing like hyper closely on every change and you just watch it as a show. It's way better. I recommend it to anyone who's had a hard time with the first go around. Just rewatch it and open your mind to what the show is and not what it isn't. But anyway, that is a problem I had with season 1. And it's a continuous problem to season 2 because by moving the Lastrygonians to camp, they remove that action scene in the school, right? And not only is it a way cooler action scene in the school than it is in the woods, but it's another like thing on Percy's list of not only schools that he gets kicked out of, which they don't make nearly as clear in season 1, how often Percy gets kicked out of schools. It seems like he doesn't, except that one that he was at in season 1. So it cuts that arc down, which I guess that's more of like a mildly humorous thing that's like happens over and over again than like an arc. But it's a really important one, I'd say. But that's not even the problem. The problem is that the cannonballs going through the gym and catching it on fire and then getting the police called on him again, that is another check on just Percy being a menace to the mortal world. And that's something that I wanted the show to like amp up, and instead they've basically cut it out. And that's okay. I'm still sad that we missed Percy telling everyone that they could buy, they could get for free furniture from Gabe's store, which doesn't even exist in the TV show. That's one of my favorite scenes from the entire series, and I'm sad we missed that, but it's not the point. I would say that moving it from the school worked for time, and it didn't, if I didn't know it was missing, I wouldn't notice, right? Like, the episode flowed really well, and getting them straight to camp worked time-wise, and it meant that we got to spend more time at this camp with Tantalus, and so I respect it. It wasn't a bad choice, but at the same time, I do miss out on those human world understandings of who Percy Jackson is. And that it's just such a fun part of the books that I really wish that like it wasn't getting cut out every time. Continuing on with like details with the travel to camp. Of course, the taxi was fantastic, but what was really fantastic was Annabeth's entrance into the show. Her, like, the taxi swinging and her popping out with the sword and then immediately being on guard against Tyson. Not only did it make sense, everyone's choices made sense in character, it immediately makes it obvious that Annabeth is going to have problems with Tyson. But also, it's just so dynamic. And that's what season 1 was missing. Like, as I said, season 1 is way better the second go around, but it was aggressively serious, but also kind of like boring, like film wise. It was like a lot of scenes of people standing, talking out plans, and then doing them, and not doing them in the most interesting way either. And one thing that Percy Jackson as a show has well, not as a show, as a book series has always been, is aggressively interesting. Like, that's what makes the books, like, come to life, is that they're so detailed and colorful, and every choice is interesting. And I'm getting a lot of that from these first 2 episodes, but I didn't get a lot of that from season 1. And so I'm very happy to see that they saw where their weaknesses were, and they are solving a lot of them. And I feel like the scene with Annabeth coming in on the taxi and like popping out right after it like swerves in is a great example of that, because they could have done that scene in so many different ways. They could have had her just show up and then to ask Percy who Tyson was with a little bit of aggravation and then get the taxi. Because, I mean, in the books, Annabeth doesn't get there by taxi. She uses the taxi after she's already there. So they could have done something like that, which would have been a lot less dynamic and a lot less interesting. And so this is one of those times where they broke from book canon a little bit, but it was awesome. So, well, I'm actually really happy about the change, honestly. Continuing on with the cannibal opening at getting to camp, right before the cannibals show up, when Annabeth and Percy are walking down the street and they're talking, I'm just so happy that we like immediately get an understanding of where these two are at relationship-wise over the school year, but also their chemistry is just so much better this season. Like, there was hints last season, but they just work now. They just clicked. They really go together. And Percy and Annabeth as characters have always clicked. As soon as they started to click, they've clicked. And so I'm really happy that these child actors are totally up to the challenge, and they are just fully connected as characters. They, like, I'm not saying they agree, like, they disagree a lot in these episodes, but they're just really good acting partners. There's such, as soon as they start talking for more than like a second, there's just like this energy that is added to the scene. And it's so obvious, and it's exactly what we need. And so I was very happy that happened. I'm not saying that there was nothing in season 1, but like they had just met as characters, so it was a little questionable, right? But it's there now. It is just there in season 2. And I'm very happy, because we could have been like seeing things in season 1 and then like they didn't have that repertoire, but they do. I should move on. So I want to talk more about Tantalus when I move on to episode 2, but I will say that as he shows up in episode 1, and you can see that he is controlling the camp like a military state. I thought that was an interesting choice. It's very different from Tantalus in the book, but not in a bad way. At first I was a little confused, and I thought that they were just kind of going for a I'm a tyrant vibe, and I think a little bit that is what's happening. But a line at the end of season 2 makes it way more clear what is going on here. And so I want to talk more about him later. But I will say that I was very intrigued by how he comes in and you immediately feel this different vibe to the camp. And I liked how they did that, even though it wasn't the vibe I was expecting. I was expecting more chaos and less fully organized and like military, almost Roman. And I mean that in like Percy Jackson Roman, where like everyone is very organized, where the Greeks are just chaotic. This was a little bit more Roman here, which I thought was interesting. The scene with Dionysus, after Tyson gets the sign that he's Poseidon, starting with that belly laugh, that was the perfect way to show how the camp is going to react to Tyson. It was amazing. It was in character, It was brutal, honestly. I feel really bad for Percy, but I also feel really bad for Tyson. But, like, that was gonna happen. There was no way to make this season and, like, have everybody just, like Tyson. That's a different show, and it's terrible, but that's the point. So having the Dionysus laugh going straight into it, it was very well done. Also, while I was surprised that Chiron was already missing, though I do like what they do in episode 2 with him, I understand. I think it was a good call to have Chiron already be fired based off of his relation to Kronos, instead of having that only happen after the tree is poisoned. Just because, honestly, it was probably going to happen anyway. They were waiting for an excuse to fire him. So I don't blame the show for just being honest about that and not being like, well, we're gonna blame you for this thing you didn't do. But the real reason is Kronos. They were just like, we're gonna be honest for once, it's Kronos. The last part of this scene that I thought was interesting was that Percy tries to get a quest with, like, no idea what the quest would entail. He's just so ready to get a quest. He's like, I want one now. We need to solve this tree problem. I don't know how to, but I just want to go and I want to get that quest, which is very different from the book, because in the book, he wants to solve the problem, but he doesn't bring up a quest as a possibility until he has an idea. And so I felt like this was a good scene to show how this is just who Percy is. And I thought this was a great way to show that he just, when he gets an idea in his head, he just needs to do it. And he won't take no for an answer. And this was a great way to show that. Instead of, like, having him wait a while, you know? Like, it's also, with the time-wise in a TV show, hey, Bast, what are we doing? With the time crunch in the show, I think that it makes sense to make clear Percy's need for a quest immediately. Usually I'd be a little annoyed that, like, they're pushing it so hard, but usually I would be upset about them trying to push the plot so hard if it, like, didn't fit with the character. But I feel like this really fits with Percy's impertinent personality. Hi. Moving our attention back to Tyson, I think the episode does a really good job in the scene at the cabin with Percy and Annabeth, showing how Percy is kind of uncomfortable with Tyson. He's, like, very conflicted. Like, he cares about Tyson, but also he finds Tyson to be a nuisance, and he doesn't like that he's his brother, but he doesn't want Tyson to know that. And I like how they get all of that emotion in one scene. And it's not like it doesn't continue on, like, throughout the episode and the next episode. But I think it's good that they, like, it wasn't just in the background. Like, they had a scene that was very focused on that. And I like how by Annabeth coming and, like, cutting off that scene, we also get hints at Annabeth being uncomfortable with Tyson. And now it's not obvious why yet. I like that they make it's kind of subtle, not too subtle, that she is uncomfortable with Tyson. It's not as, like, hit you on the head as the movie was, where it was like, calm down a little bit. It's like, it's there. She's not letting it affect her choices as much as she could, but it's obviously there. And they're able to highlight both of those aspects really well in the scene, and how Tyson knows. Like, we don't always know how well Tyson, like, is understanding how people see him in the book, but in the TV show, it's obvious that Tyson knows, like, and that he knows that Percy is conflicted and might not want him to be his brother, and he feels alone. And so I feel like that whole scene in the cabin just does a fantastic job at showing us how all three of our main characters in this show are going to be connected to each other and how they're going to interact with, like, what are the emotions that are going to be involved moving forward. Moving on to something a bit happier, and I don't mean happier as in like everyone's in a great position, but like how fun are the empathy link scenes? Like, oh my gosh, the changing of clothes. Like, I'm gonna continue this when I talk about episode 2, but like, they're just hilarious. They're amazing. I also like that they don't have Grover like force an empathy link on Percy in this version, because that has always been I understand that he was about to die, but you know, the like, you could die parts, and then he's just like, I'm in a deadly situation, and so I very purposely made it so that you'll die with me if I die. Like, has always been a bit weird, and so I like that they cut that out, and it's just awesome. Like, and we really get to see why Percy and Grover are such good friends. Honestly, sometimes in the books, you can't tell why Percy likes Grover so much. Like, there's a relationship there for sure, but there's a reason that Grover gets cut out of Heroes of Olympus. And I feel like it's because he's just not as important of a character as you would want him to be in the first series. Talking about Grover, because I haven't talked about the opening, this series is making Grover a way more important and smart character. Like, he is getting himself out of situations against like a group of like 7 demigods. In the books, like, Grover eventually gets there, but at this point in the books, like, Grover is often just freaking out and getting terrified, and then Percy has to save him. Like, Grover's holding his own. Like, now, is it because he had the pipes on him and he was able to do something cool at the last moment? Yes. But, like, he wasn't terrified or anything. And now, does he immediately get attacked by a sea monster? Yes. I thought that was interesting. I feel like it's having the sea monster in on Polyphemus's trap weirds me out a little bit, but I'm wondering how that will affect their escape later on. Because if Polyphemus is working by himself, then yes, they are able to get on the ship and get pretty far away, right? But if Polyphemus has this like sea monster that's helping him out, which is also weirding me out because I am a mythology buff and this is not a thing in the mythology unless it's, I don't know what it would be. I will get back to you if we get more details. But this sea monster could stop them from getting away in the last episodes. So I'm really curious how that's going to like happen. But yeah, the empathy scene is amazing, and I am so excited. It's a great way for them to get information, and I will talk more about it when we get to episode 2. Oh, one more detail about that scene, though, is I am weirded out that Grover had to say the coordinates a second time. Percy already got the coordinates. And if Grover had just said Sea of Monsters, and he still had that map, and he looked at it, and he realized that he had the numbers already, it would just make Percy look a little smarter. And now, Percy does not look stupid this season. Like, that was a problem in the first season because he was new to all of this, and so often he seemed a little dumb. Though the fact that all the characters just seem like so much smarter than they are in the books because they're just not allowed to ever be surprised anymore. That was Percy being a little like slow in the mythology point of view. Balance it out a little bit. But now, like, Percy's very smart. But it felt heavy-handed to say the coordinates twice in this episode, especially because the coordinates get said like a million times in the next episode. And wrong once. It was great because I was like, those are the wrong coordinates. And then Percy was like, those are the wrong coordinates. And I was like, okay, I'm not going insane. But it's just, we didn't need them said that many times. I think Percy could have figured out their coordinates on his own, especially because he does figure that out on his own in the book. And I think this is a good situation where Percy can prove that he's smart. Last thing I wanted to say is I really appreciate how the series is making incredibly obvious how much Annabeth cares about Thalia and how important she was to her. So her scene where she's sitting on a tree and just watching the tree and talking to Thalia, that was a really good scene. And I really appreciate that the show is not just making us assume that these characters care about Thalia, but not like putting in the work, you know? Like they are putting in the work. I can see why these characters care about Thalia. I was a little worried because like they bring her up in the first season, but like it was just so... The first season in general was a little heavy-handed on exposition. And now that's also less of a problem in the beginning of the show. Like season 1, episode 1 and 2 versus season 2, episode 1 and 2 are light years different when it comes to how do you put exposition in without making it incredibly obvious. There was exposition, but most of it is Grover being like, I have no idea what's going on, and the characters explaining things to him. But even then, it's not, like, annoying. Like, it makes sense in the scene. By the way, Thalia, like, the pronunciation is just killing me because, like, I do mythology now, and so everyone says Talia in classics. Though I am also really bad at A's, so I know that I'm not even saying that. I might not even be saying that right. It's like, it's not Talia. I think it's Talia. But do they say Thalia in the TV show? Either way, it's a little off for me, but when I was a kid, I pronounced it Thalia, so anything's better than that, right? Okay, but overall, episode 1 is a fantastic episode, and I really enjoyed it. But do you know what I enjoyed more than episode 1? Episode 2! I loved episode 2. So let's get into it. So the episode starts with Annabeth sneaking in to Tantalus's office, which was Chiron's office, while Percy distracts Tantalus. Now this scene, when I was first watching it, what I was paying attention to was the Annabeth Chiron conversation. But thinking back after the end of the episode, that was not the only thing that was important in that scene. But let's start with it. So first thing I want to say is we're so getting party ponies, and I'm very excited because we didn't get them in the movie, and I love the party ponies, and I'm just so excited that we're getting them. We didn't get to see them yet, but they're coming. But moving on to the actual importance of the conversation between Chiron and Annabeth, I think it was an amazing decision for Annabeth to be told by Chiron about the prophecy in this moment. Because I think in the books, it's pretty clear that Annabeth already knew what the prophecy was before the first book. Now, she doesn't tell Percy about it until book 2. But season 1 makes it almost seem like she might know the prophecy because she's looking for someone special. But they make it clear, I think, from this episode that actually she just knew there was someone special coming, but she didn't know anything about the person. Whereas now she's being told the prophecy. And so it matters more because it's not just her finding out about a prophecy and then meeting Percy and knowing he's in charge of the prophecy. It's she finds out about this prophecy when she's in this really close but like weird relationship with Percy, and so she cares so much about him that she really has, like, she's freaking out. She is freaking out. And now she's trying her best to follow what Chiron said and to cut him out. But, like, this is just so good. Like, it's such a good character moment for Annabeth. And I'm really appreciating the scenes in this show that are not Percy focused, where we get to see things from Annabeth's point of view or from Grover's. And this is one of them for sure. But I really like that change because it fits into what happens in the book, where Percy finds out about the prophecy in this book. But it doesn't feel like it's going to come out of nowhere because, like, we're setting up the pieces ahead of time. I also like the whole conversation between Annabeth and Chiron because it makes clear to the viewer why this season isn't so important. Like, Luke is going to try his hardest to move Percy to his side. And that is one of the driving momentums of this season. And I like that they made that clear immediately. Without telling us, like, we know Annabeth was told that, right? But it's more hinted to us. Like, we don't get the words, like, again, no exposition, no, like, clear exposition. We figure it out from the clues, right? But it's a good hint towards what is one of the important pieces of this season, and I like that. But, as I said, this scene isn't just important because of Chiron and Annabeth. It's also important because of Tantalus and Percy. This is the scene where they start hinting at, like, how important the rule book of Camp Half-Blood is. And I was surprised because I don't really remember a rule book in the books. Maybe it was brought up. I don't know. But I was like, that's cute. But I didn't think too much about it because it felt like something that you would just throw in to this universe. I didn't think it was going to be an important detail. And I still don't know how important of a detail it is. Maybe it'll come back more. But what it is important to is it's important to Tantalus and how he sees the world. Because in the first episode, I was having a hard time understanding why Tantalus was making the choices he was making. And it was starting to irk me a little bit because I liked him, not as a person. As a character. I thought he was an interesting character. But I couldn't figure out what was the reasoning behind his choices, right? In the book, he's just, like a chaotic demon who hates the gods, and so he's more than willing to let the camp get destroyed. And Dionysus doesn't care. And I like that in this series, he's not like he's sad. I don't know if he'd be sad if the camp got destroyed. Oh my gosh. Damn. I don't know if Tantalus would be sad if the camp got destroyed. And I don't know if Dionysus would be sad if the camp got destroyed. But it's not their goal. It's not what's driving either of the characters. Like, you can tell that Dionysus cares a little bit. He just doesn't like the characters to know that he cares, right? And Tantalus has a much more interesting, like, reason for his choices, which is he defied the gods, and now he wants to punish others who defy the gods, which is a very interesting decision to make here. Because, like, in the books, like, the closest we get to a connection to his backstory is that he killed his children and ate them. Well, he didn't eat them. He fed them to the gods. Actually, in the mythology, only one god actually eats any of his child, Pelops. And that's Demeter, because she's mourning the disappearance of Persephone when she gets taken to the underworld. But that's not the point. In the books, it's made clear that he punished his children for being on the god's side by killing them. Apparently, he has more than one child in the Percy Jackson universe. Maybe he has another child in the mythology that I don't know about, but I'm getting close to knowing a lot about mythology at this point, so I can't think of one. But anyway, yeah, like that's he punished children when he was alive, so now as this like weird kind of alive, kind of dead being that he is in Camp Half-Blood, he wants to punish children again, which makes him annoying, but doesn't make him that big of a threat. I wish that they did a little bit more of the food stuff. This is just off topic. I know it would have been a lot of money to like have the food like keep running away from him, but it would have been great. Not the point. The point is, in this scene, we get the rule books, and then at the end of the episode, we find out that Tantalus' choices are because he doesn't think that anyone else should be able to defy the laws of the gods because he got punished so severely for defying the laws of the gods when he stole ambrosia and nectar. And so I thought that was a really interesting choice, not only because it makes the character more interesting, but also because it highlights that Percy and Annabeth and Tyson are breaking rules right now. Now, to be fair, they did get permission from Hermes. But the gods aren't a monolith. They still broke the rules of the camp, and some of the gods could, like, care about that. And so there is an idea that they might never be able to go back to life the way it was after this. And so the choices they make from here on out are made with that understanding that, like, camp wouldn't let them make these choices to save the camp, right? And so I think it's going to be interesting how they interact, I think it's going to be interesting how they bring this thread into the rest of the season, especially with Luke. There might be some talk about why do we have to follow their rules that'll be a bit more highlighted here because of the Tantalus plotline than they would have been without this change. The majority of this episode, though, is about chariots, so let's move on to the chariots. One thing that I thought was interesting was that they make the chariots more important to the actual plots. Annabeth has a reason for wanting to do the chariot race, which is wanting to get a quest from it, from the boon that she would win. And I think that's interesting because with how they've changed it slightly to make Percy really focus on this quest the whole time, it would be out of character for Percy to do the chariot race without a good reason, right? Because, like, in the books, it's like, yeah, like, all these things are happening, but I don't know how to solve them, so let's just make a chariot instead. Like, I'm not gonna focus on researching how to save the camp. I'm gonna make a chariot. And so I liked how they made the chariot races more important to the plot, especially because the scene was amazing. And it would have been so sad if they cut out the chariots. Like, the chariots are cut out of the movie, and they could have done the chariot race. Like, they make such a big deal about the competitions between Clarice and Percy throughout the camp. Like, they make that like a highlight of the movies, and yet they don't do the chariot races, and so they do that weird game. I think it's supposed to be the climbing wall, but it's like, it's a weird climbing wall. It's not bad. It's fine. But instead of doing the climbing wall, they could have done the chariot races in that movie. Back to the TV show, though. The chariot races were amazing. It was so good. I know they only did the five chariots instead of like one for more of the cabins. Like they cut out Apollo and such like that. But the chariots that we do have, they're so detailed and like they have all these fun like tricks. And I was worried that they were gonna make them all the same and just like slightly different for like emblems, but otherwise they would be the same, because a lot of that fun like godly parents stuff that like makes each cabin interesting got cut out of the first season because they weren't focusing on the camp. And so I was so happy that they didn't cut it out this time. And so we can see that it's probably going to be something that they continue on. I was just so excited. They were amazing. But also the scene was just action-packed. It was so fun. I can't stop saying it was fun. But also the birds were great. They did their job amazing. And then the Mariah Carey scream being what got them to fly away. Perfect. I have no notes. I was wondering what music they were going to use. I was so worried that they were going to choose something that like didn't quite work. But no, my Mariah Carey scream, perfect. Before that though, I want to say, I was talking earlier about how like sometimes the characters seem too smart in season 1, and that's still happening. And there's 2 instances where Annabeth is just too smart. Like, she's supposed to be able to solve problems, but she shouldn't just know everything. And, for example, she can just smell the poison and she knows. If she had asked someone who worked in, like, plant medicine and they could tell her, that would be perfect. And her being able to know who to ask, that would show that she was smart, right? Or even just the fact that she looked at it and she was like, oh, like, this looks like something, like if she saw the situation and went, well, the only reason that it would be oozing is if it was poisoned, that's still showing that she's smart. But knowing the exact poison is just annoying because it's lazy writing. Like, a caricature can be smart without knowing every single thing, right? If she at least said, oh, like, I took a class that taught me different types of poison, that would have been annoying as well. But, like, that would have made sense at least. But it's weird. And then she just knew that the birds were the Stephalian birds, and they were so far away, like you shouldn't be able to see that from that far away. And it worked in the episode, so it's fine. But that was just a problem that happened so often in season 1, and I hope that they don't do that too much. Because, like, there was plenty of reason why she wouldn't know that those were the birds yet, especially if they hadn't highlighted the birds the day earlier and they'd only shown up the day of, like they do in the book. There would be plenty of reason that she would just go, oh, birds. And that would be fine. And then she'd figure out that they were the Stephalian birds when they got closer and started attacking. And that would show that she was smart because in that moment of panic, she was still able to figure it out. But being like, oh yeah, they're like all the way up there, and yet I can just know that those are monster birds and not regular birds. Like, regular birds exist. They could have been crows. Like, I mean, I don't know how popular crows are in Long Island. I know there's a lot of crows where I'm going to college right now, but they could have been crows. They could have been some other bird, but she just knows that they're monsters. And it's getting a little old. Talking about the scene where Clarice chooses who is going to go on the quest with her. That scene was pretty good. I loved that Tantalus tried to pretend it was his dream and he totally got the coordinates wrong. That was very funny. But what was so interesting in that scene was, of course, Clarice chooses Annabeth, and Annabeth convinces Clarice not to choose Percy. But what was interesting was she was going to choose Percy. She was a second away from choosing him, which is just so different from the books, where she would never choose Percy, ever. And, like, until later on, like, she eventually respects him. But she was fully ready to do it in that moment. And that was a very interesting choice, especially because in the actual books, Clarice doesn't choose anyone. She goes on the quest by herself. And then you find out that, like, Percy and Annabeth and Tyson kind of become her quest anyway. But she doesn't choose anyone. And she doesn't choose anyone because she's told that she's gonna fly alone. Like, fly home alone. And so by cutting that out, like, maybe she'll find out after she gets her, maybe she'll find out after she goes to the Oracle, and then she'll regret taking Chris with her, and then Chris will turn against her. But it's interesting to have her choose people before she gets her Oracle. Because it both does this interesting, it highlights what's going on between Annabeth and Percy, which I think is really important for how they're doing this, how they're changing this dynamic for this season. I think that was good. But also, it might mean that they're cutting out the entire storyline of Clarice going home alone on the plane. And I mean, it would be cool to see Clarice at the fight with Luke. But also, like, that's one of the smartest things Percy does, is sends Clarice on her way alone, and then Luke catches up to them and is like, give me the fleece. And she's like, you're too late. So, like, I'll see how they change it. I'm sure they have a great plan. But they are doing that. I do like how she chooses Chris, though. Not only because Chris ends up being her boyfriend, right? And so I noticed that she, like, was trying to flirt with him earlier, and that was really cute. But also, he's evil at the moment. He's on Luke's side. And so her choosing him, and then he's gonna betray her. Now I'm like, is he gonna become a good guy later on? Because, like, how would Clarice forgive him if he betrays her so clearly in this moment? But also, is this on purpose? They chose to highlight their relationship more so that there is actually a relationship to highlight when they start dating later on. I think it's the second one, but I'm very intrigued and I'm excited to see what happens. Okay, I'm going to try to speed round the last few details here. First of all, the Cyclops voice changing feature, like he's a robot. Great, it was perfect. I just wanted to say that was fantastic and I was excited they did it. Also, wedding dress explanation, hilarious. I'm happy. It's actually better that Grover got the wedding dress from a shipwreck than from a wedding boutique, because it always rooted me out that he got all the way back to Florida and then got taken by Polyphemus. It makes more sense that he's just on the island. So I'll take it. I will take it. Also, him just like, oh no, I need to cook dinner. Like, it was amazing. And Percy wearing the dress, like, the empathy link is amazing. It is so funny. I just appreciate all of it so much. I think half of these reviews are just gonna be me going, oh my gosh, empathy link. Until, of course, they stop doing it because they're together again. But I hope that these continue in other, like, I hope these continue in other seasons, because they don't really do the empathy link much in the other books. They do a little bit. They highlight the empathy link a little bit when Percy loses his memory. but it's like it's very like blink and you'll miss it because Grover can't get a very good connection. So I think that this might just be a fun aspect of this season, but it's so fun. Like, I would not mind it coming back at all. Also, the Hermes scene, it was great. My only problem is that, once again, the creators of the show are focusing more on the serious aspects than anything that's funny. And, I mean, in this scene, it's okay. Because, like, they really focused on the humor when they did the Hermes scene in the movie. And I don't hate that scene, honestly. It was fine. But this being so different from the movies one, I think that might be positive. But it's just, I want to bring up again that the TV show is focusing more on the seriousness of the situations. And that causes a lot of the funny, like, situational humor to just go out the door. But otherwise, it was a perfect representation of the scene. Like, I like that Hermes tried to make it seem like he was there for Percy's help and Percy only, but then Percy was able to easily figure out that Hermes was there for Luke, and that conversation between Percy and Hermes, where Hermes is like, you don't understand, you don't give up on family. That hits. Like, that was a good scene, and it's gonna be an important scene for the rest of the series. And so I'm happy they didn't mess that up. But yeah, sometimes it feels like this series is not getting the humor right. But then, of course, right after this, Tantalus starts chasing them with a crossbow. So maybe I'm wrong. Like, season 2 is definitely balancing humor and seriousness much better than season 1. Season 1 was good, but season 2 is starting out like it's gonna be great. So, yeah. The last comments that I wrote down while reading were the chemistry. I just wanted to bring up again that Percy and Annabeth have amazing chemistry. Okay, I only say this because of the movies, but the Andromeda is so big. And I'm just excited that they have, like, an actual cruise ship instead of the movie, which was too cheap, and we're like, it's a yacht. No, it's a cruise ship. The cruise ship is so fun. And of course they weren't going to be able to hide on a yacht. I do hope in episode 3 that they do the get off my roof joke, because that was one of the only funny, like, add-ons. Like, there were some fine things in the movie, but the get off my roof joke, like, people remember that one pretty well, and I would love to see it in the next episode. Now, I know the next episode has already premiered at the point that I am filming this, but I only read the chapters of the book again up to this episode, so I need to read 3 more chapters before I watch the next episode, and I'm traveling for the holidays, so I'll probably do it then. Anyway, that was my review of episode 1 and 2. This was a bit longer because of the 2 episodes. But yeah, this was super fun, and it's giving me hope that they are going to be able to do a really good retelling of this series on TV. Because I liked season 1. There's a lot of positives. But with 2 years of retrospect, a lot of the things that I remember before I rewatched it were how awful the underworld was. And just, I remember being frustrated with all the changes. And now, rewatching it, season 1 flows way better than I thought it did the first time I watched it. But season 2 is just good. It's just a good adaptation. And I don't have to rewatch it and then figure out if I like it. It's just good. And to be fair, this is my least favorite book. of the entire series. And so me being this excited about the adaptation means that not only are they doing a good adaptation, but they're making me like the book. I mean, I've always liked the book. It's like picking your favorite baby. Like you're gonna have a favorite, you're gonna have a least favorite. Not really, but I hope you don't actually have a favorite and least favorite baby. But what I'm saying is I love all of them dearly, but like I'm gonna like one a little less than the others. And sadly, it's this one. But I'm liking this season so far more than I liked the first season. So I don't think that it's gonna be my least favorite season if they get all 5 seasons done, which they better. But anyway, so that was it. I need to make a new sign off because I made a new opening. What should I do? Well, until I figure it out, I guess all I can say is see you later.